Better question is not can you legislate morality, but whose morality are you going to legislate?
I think that's it.
Because you will legislate somebody's morality, whether it's Sharia law, whether it's secular law, whether it's whatever. You will legislate somebody's. So why not legislate from a proven morality that has shown itself to... it's really interesting. There is a book that came out in 1752 called The Spirit of the Laws by Charles Montesquieu. And Charles Montesquieu took 1,000 years of world history. He looked at every major world religion, and he says, this is the societal product of that religion. He says, where you have Islam, you have despotism, you have monarchy, you have theocratic governments, the people have no rights. He said, where you have Catholicism, he says, you tend to have monarchs because you have a single ruler over all. He said, where you have Protestant, Biblical, Reformation Christianity, the people rule. And the people are, so you have, he said republicanism goes with Protestantism. He said with Catholicism goes monarchy. And he said with with Islam or with Muslim goes tyranny and despotism and theocracy.
Now there's people just all around the world being upset, but this is a historical fact.
That's historical fact.
But they don't want to face fact. They have a paradigm that they're going to believe regardless of what facts are.
And so if you're going to say, why should we legislate morality, let me give just an example. We have those in America all the time. But they have, when the court came out with the separation of church and state nonsense that it did, which really meant secularization of church and state, it's like, oh, no more faith-based programs. So the previous president made a big issue out of doing something with it. Now, what we can do is we can statistically show the difference. For example, every state in the United States, all 50 states, have state prison systems. In addition to that, we have federal prison systems. I've been on the consultant pool of the U.S. Justice Department for a number of years. Can tell you that in the prisons in America, whether run by a state or run by the federal government, the recidivism rate is 68%, which means when we let somebody go within 2 years, 68% will commit a crime that puts them back in prison. We now have 14 or 15 states that have faith-based prisons. Okay, in those states with a faith-based prison, the recidivism rate is 8%. As opposed to 68%. That's 85% better.
I heard Chuck Colson making that exact point on Mike Huckabee's program recently.
And see, the point of that is, all right, if I can reduce prison return by 85%, I need 85% fewer police officers, 85% fewer courts, 85% fewer prisons, 85% fewer prison guards. That's going to drop my taxes on justice areas 85%. Hey, if I'm an atheist, I want faith-based programs because they produce something better. Judeo-Christian morality, the biblical morality given in the Scripture, makes that. On something else, you take something like drugs. The government drug rehab programs, the average cure rate is less than 20%. Faith-based drug rehab programs, Teen Challenge, over 70%. Now, that's a massive difference. 25% of all crimes committed in this nation are committed by people attached to drugs who are committing crimes to get money to feed their drug habit. So if we drop that by 60%, we've now dropped crime another significant.
Let me. I got this quote from you, and you can expound on it. But Benjamin Rush said, "If we cease to teach Bible in schools, we will expend much time and money in punishing crime instead of preventing it."
Yeah.
Now that. I was trying to write quick. I may not have got it exactly word for word.
That's it. Benjamin Rush was a founding father who signed the Declaration. He was considered one of the three most notable founding fathers. John Adams said, you got George Washington, you got Ben Franklin, and Benjamin Rush. We don't have a clue who the guy is today. Benjamin Rush, just to credential him a little bit, signed the Declaration, but he also started the first abolition society in America. It's really started the modern civil rights movement. He also, as a white guy, started the first black denomination in America, the AME denomination. He also is called the father of American medicine. He found medical cures we still use today. He is the father of psychiatry. The American Psychiatric Association has his picture on the logo of their letterhead. He was a ratifier of the Constitution. He was the director of the U.S. Mint under 3 different presidents. He's a financial expert.
How do you remember all this stuff, Dave?
Because I'm so
your heart is really into it.
I love it because I see that and
That's
say,
amazing.
Why can't we be like that? You know, why is it that we're content with mediocrity? Why are we content to be so much less than what we could be? And I'll just give you an example. Diaries and Regis Diaries. Now, first off,
excuse me, that was John Adams.
John Adams, first vice president. This little book here was done by President John Quincy Adams. This little book shows 10-year-old Americans how to read through the Bible from cover to cover once a year. Now, when's the last time we've had an American president show? I mean, we want adults to read through the Bible from cover to cover. We're teaching our 10-year-olds to do that, and a president is doing that. What's cool about him is he would sit down on Sundays, and he says in here, I read 4 to 5 chapters of the Bible every morning, first thing. But on Sundays, he really got into more of it. And I have records of him on Sunday where one Sunday he was really, really ticked in his diaries, because the preacher only preached 45 minutes, and he thought that's a waste of time. He said, I want a 2-hour sermon. I don't know what these 45...
He'd have loved me.
Oh, well, see, he wanted content, and they wanted content. But he would go home on Sunday afternoons, and he would start reading the Bible. And when you read his diary, he kept a diary for 68 years. He started a diary when he was 11 years old. He kept it till he died at the age of 79. And there was 24 years where he never missed a day's entry in his diary. And instead of just saying, got up at 8:30, went to bed at 9, he would have 8, 10, 12, 14 pages of what went on, what he was thinking, who he met with, what they said. And so on Sunday afternoons, you'll be reading him, and he says, well, I was reading in Romans 8 today, and it looks like the French translation out of the Greek is much better than the German translation, although Russian is not that bad, but the Italian, he reads the Bible in 7 languages. No, and he's self-taught. Now, why don't we do that? We can. No, I don't. He's called the father of public schools under the Constitution. The guy started 5 universities, and 3 of them are still going today. So he is a huge educator, but when he was called the father of public schools for writing he did in 1790 as a founding father, saying, all right, now we have the Constitution, so let's look at our school system. In 1791, he did a second major educational piece, National Schools. And in it, and the first one, by the way, he said the only reason, you'll love this, he said the only reason we need public schools is because there may be some American children among us who don't know the Bible. He said, and America can't survive if it doesn't know the Bible. That's why we have public schools.
And today, if you do know the Bible and go to public school, you get it drilled out of you.
Get out. So that was his first paper in 1790. In 1791, his second paper was the use of the Bible in schools. He gave a dozen reasons we would never take the Bible out of schools. And in really kind of a prophetic moment, because he was looking, he's so wise, he's looking ahead. He said, I wonder if a future generation of Americans might take the Bible out of schools. Nah, they're too, well, they might. And in looking at that, that's where he said that. He said, in contemplating the political institutions of the United States, he said, if we were ever to remove the Bible from schools, I lament that we would be wasting so much time and so much money and punishing crime and taking so little pains to prevent crime.
Yeah.
And that's what
and
our
that is prophetic. It's exactly
it.
where we are.
We took it up in 1963. It's gone up 694%.
Now, are you talking about when they kicked the prayer out? Is that when that
Prayer was taken out in 1962 in Engle versus Vitale. And within 12 months later, in 63, in 2 cases, Abby Neshimp and Mary Corlett, the court said, oh, by the way, while we're at it, not only no prayer, but no Bible either. So in 63, we took the Bible out. And by the way, this book right here contains the very first public school law passed in America. It's from 1647. And that public school law passed in 1647, and the name of this book is called the Code of 1650. So this was done, the 1650 compilation of the laws, and that was passed in 1647. But in the law that they have in 1647, the law is actually called the Old Deluder Satan Law.
Oh, yeah.
Now, why would you call a public school law deal? Because they explain in the law, it says it's the chief project of that old deluder Satan to keep men from the knowledge of the Scriptures, as he has in former days. And they said, in America, we're not going to let the old deluder keep us out of the Scriptures. We're starting public schools. So this required that when you got 50 people into a community, you had to build a public school. When you got 100 people in the community, you had to hire a teacher for the public school. And the whole purpose of public school is to make sure our kids know the Bible so that we don't get off into the civil atrocities they had in Europe with the Inquisition, Crusades, and etc. I mean,